Travelling from his home in Windsor to Wales in search of his family ancestry is fashion designer David Emanuel. Born one of 11 children, David grew up in Bridgend, South Wales. And later the Emanuel name was made famous for creating Princess Diana's magical wedding dress, an iconic image around the world. More recently, David's won over a new generation of fans on ITV's I'm a Celebrity. And now, proud Welshman David Emanuel is coming home. On his journey, David will discover his grandfather's love for speed.
This actually looks like a little corset here.
Learns of his connection to showbiz royalty.
No more surprises. This is too much.
And did David's grandfather really know the great Lawrence of Arabia?
Well, my father has mentioned a few times that his father, my grandfather, was in the army and he knew Lawrence of Arabia, T. Lawrence. I'd like to put that to rest. Is that true? I'm sure it is. If my father says it's true, it should be true.
So it's his grandfather's story that David is most keen to uncover.
So this is the chap I'm intrigued about. This is my father's father, my grandfather. He actually died before I was even born, obviously, so I never met him. I met my mother's father, but not my father's father. So this is the chap I'm intrigued about. This is the one I'd really like to get to know a bit more. But apart from that, quite a handsome chap, I think.
It's easy to see the resemblance between David and his grandfather, John. The Emanuel family came originally from West Wales, but later settled here in Merthyr Tydfil, then a booming coal and iron town. And it's to Merthyr that David has come, to the very imposing and grand Old Town Hall, also known as the Red House. And it's here genealogist Mike Churchill-Jones is waiting to reveal David's family tree.
Are you apprehensive?
I'm a little bit apprehensive, but more excited. Show me, quick.
I will.
Oh, my goodness.
There we go.
Wow. There's quite a lot of us, isn't there?
Yeah, on your paternal side, you've got deep Welsh roots in Carmarthenshire.
Right.
And on your maternal side, you have deep Welsh roots in Ceredigion.
Oh, Ceredigion?
Yes.
That's
There's
me.
yourself here.
Gosh.
Any other names you instantly recognise?
John Lawrence Morrow, my father.
Yes, yeah.
Because always growing up, you know, the mentioned word Emanuel.
Yeah.
So people used to say, is it Spanish? And I used to say, no, it's Welsh. And then people used to say, Emanuel, you know, the lost tribe of Israel. So was there a Jewish side? Because you really don't know what the truth is. But this is it.
Indeed.
The tree does indeed confirm the Emanuels were a firmly Welsh family. David was always brought up to believe that his grandfather, John Leslie Emanuel, was an army officer in World War I.
Your grandfather, John Leslie Emanuel.
Yes.
You have his middle name.
Yes.
He obviously died before you was born.
Correct. I never met my grandfather or my grandmother on that side. Obviously on this side I did, but not on that side.
Records show that David's grandfather was the son of a coal miner, John Emanuel, who originally came from Kidwelly in Carmarthenshire.
Now, John Emanuel is clearly shown there as a collier, but I can reveal to you, he's the reason why you're in Merthyr Tydfil today. Because after he was a collier, he became a serving police officer in Merthyr Tydfil.
Oh, really?
Indeed.
Gosh. Quite serious. I mean, an upgrade then from obviously working in the mines, then to be a pillar of the establishment of society, keeping everybody in check.
So David has a big family tree to explore, starting with his great-grandfather.
It's fascinating. It's great to know that I'm from good Welsh stock.
First, David is off to Merthyr Tydfil police station. He's just learnt that his great-grandfather, John Emanuel, was a policeman, and he's here to find specific information on his service record. Under escort from a Merthyr civilian detention officer, he's joining police historian Ross Mather, who's gone back to the 1860s to unearth the story of Police Sergeant 93, John Emanuel.
That's the period that he would have joined. That's how he would have dressed.
Not actually as stylish as the policeman today. But,
Not,
you know, I'm looking at the fashion, of course.
But that is, you know, that's state of the art in the 1860s because they were looking for comfort, they were looking for practicality of a uniform, whereas prior to that you had the swallowtail coat, the top hat.
Yeah.
Ross has built up an important collection of artefacts from this period.
This is what, as you can see, it's a Glamorgan Constabulary decorated truncheon.
We recognise the Royal Crest,
That's
of
the
course.
Royal Crest.
Right. Actually, this is quite smart, considering it's quite a tough job. Okay.
So when he joined, he would have had that instead of a warrant card, because if a policeman in the 1860s...
so this actually said who he was?
It was his staff of office.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was...
But it was also used, I'm sure, as well.
This image from the 1870s is of the Glamorgan Constabulary. Although David's great-grandfather may be in this photograph, it's impossible to know which one he is. But Ross has got a wonderful surprise for David.
What I'm going to show you now is your great-grandfather.
No.
Yes.
Really?
There he is.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow. And how did you trace it to him? My goodness me.
93 on this collar, and that is him.
Oh, I see.
If you look, you can, I'm sure you can see the likeness, the family likeness is here.
Jeepers. Actually, it's interesting you say that. It doesn't look unlike my father, but all this beard thing.
Yes, but it's called a curtain beard.
Right.
Obviously, it hangs like a curtain underneath
You can see he was a big chap. I mean,
yes,
the size of his hands.
Wow. What they wanted in Merthyr, Aberdare, they wanted big men who could be a presence.
Jeepers.
But that's a copy.
Wow.
And,
that's really kind. Thank you very much.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, no, there's more.
Finished yet.
Oh, no!
There's the original.
Really? Oh,
and I'd like to give it to you.
Oh.
It belongs with your family.
That's really kind. God,
That was bought from an antiques shop in Aberdare in the mid-1980s. A friend of mine who ran a shop, she used to look for bits and pieces. That was...
Goodness me.
In an antique shop. And there's no doubt about it. That is your great-grandfather, because his number's 93.
Wow.
So that deserves to be with you.
Well, apart from the beard, he's a very good-looking man. We like that. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Can I get out of here now? I want something more... I want a bit more glamour in my life.
I think they've got a place specially ready for you tonight.
There. No. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
God, fascinating.
It's found its way home.
Absolutely.
It's found its way home.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Relieved to be out of the cells and in the sunshine. Next, David's off to find what Merthyr was like 150 years ago, when his great-grandfather policed these streets. Now in the shopping precinct, David is definitely enjoying his newfound popularity. But he has an appointment to keep with historian Louise Miskell.
David, welcome to Merthyr Tydfil.
Thank you very much. God, a beautiful sunny day.
Isn't it? Yes.
But I've just learned my great-grandfather was a policeman here in I think I'm right, 1868. So obviously Merthyr at that time was to be very different to the Merthyr today.
That's right, yes. Your grandfather John worked here as a policeman from that time. Really interesting time in Merthyr's history, I think.
Demand for iron and coal saw Merthyr's population explode from just under 8,000 in 1801 to over 50,000 in the 1850s.
But by the time of the 1860s, when your great-grandfather moved here, it had a crisis of confidence in some ways in its economy.
Right.
The future of the ironworks was looking uncertain.
Right. Great-grandfather, the policeman, must have had a tough job.
I think he'd have had a very tough job. There was a lot of poverty in Merthyr.
Right.
Ironworks employ large numbers of low-skilled labourers who would have been paid very irregularly, would have worked irregularly. And to make ends meet, you know, in those conditions with large families would have been really difficult in the 19th century.
Alcohol also added to this volatile mix at the time. Keeping law and order amongst Merthyr's transient workforce took a very special type of policeman.
And the other thing to remember is there weren't that many of them. I mean, when the police force was established in the 1840s, you're talking about around 13 men for a district that wasn't just Merthyr, it was the wider area. And a population of around 50,000. I mean, there was no way they could really police the whole area. So they had to kind of try and focus on particular problem areas.
I'm beginning to think he must have been quite some man, I think. Did we take on that task? It's a big ask, isn't it?
I think so. He must have had a very well-developed sense of duty, you know, and a sense of public responsibility.
That's the Emanuel's. That's the Emanuel's. I like that.
Good.
I like that.
Yes.
So David's great-grandfather was an imposing Victorian policeman. But what of his wife, David's great-grandmother? Her name was Mary Wilmot, and to learn of her story, David is visiting Merthyr's Cyfarthfa Castle Museum. Here he's about to learn that, in fact, he was not the first in his family to work in the fashion industry in London, as expert Meredith Town can reveal.
In the census of 1871, she is named here as Mary Wilmot. She is an apprentice. She's aged 16, and it says here that she's a dressmaker's apprentice. As an apprentice, she'd have started probably about the age of 14. Her apprenticeship should have lasted about 2 years, from which she would then move on to be an improver, and then she'd have slowly risen the ranks. But she certainly would have stayed long enough to be qualified as a dressmaker, which can take a number of years.
Meredith has brought along examples of clothes from the period when Mary was a dressmaker, from the 1860s onwards.
So as she grew up, her fashions that she would have seen would be something similar to this, which are these massive skirts and dresses.
Very old Emanuel, with the crinoline skirts and everything.
Absolutely. Once she gets to being an apprentice in the 1870s, the fashions have substantially changed, and we're looking more at something like this.
Still rather fabulous, though.
Now, these are wonderful, very narrow-skirted. It's a period between the two bustle periods that we know of. But if you look at the amount of decoration, the ruching, the frills...
Velvet ribbons, the embroidery...
The tucks, the...
I love the corset shape there, though.
Wonderful. But the silhouette, as it comes down, is all this very long serpentine silhouette, which is lovely. But the work involved in something like this... But Mary, as a young girl and as an apprentice, would have aimed very high, potentially. We know she eventually moves to London, and the idea behind that is that she wants to progress. And fashion houses, as they were called, though many of them were more like factories, was you could have the first-class ones, which are for your aristocracy. And that's your court dressmakers, and then you go further down the ranks. And for Mary, she would presumably have really aimed to go into one of these fashion houses rather than being an outworker, because as an outworker, you were very badly treated.
For many young girls like Mary, newly arrived in London, life as a dressmaker inevitably meant long hours and poor pay.
Basically, what you say, it was slave fashion.
It was slave fashion, unfortunately. These women are paid, on average, outworkers to these fashion houses are paid about 9 shillings a week. Now, bearing in mind, 3 shillings has to go on your lodging. And if you compare that to an unskilled male labourer in London, gets 20 to 25 shillings a week. And you are considering that this is actually skilled labour by these women. They are horrendously badly paid for it. So, as much as I love looking at these beautiful items, when I think
at the back of your mind...
Exactly.
You're thinking, what would the reality of it all?
David is now heading from Merthyr across the Brecon Beacons to Brecon Town itself. Here, at the South Wales Borderers Museum, they commemorate the regiment's role in the defence of Rorke's Drift in South Africa, an event which was commemorated in the 1964 film Zulu, in which another famous Emanuel appeared. The celebrated Welsh singer Ivor Emanuel, who in the film leads the regiment in a stirring rendition of Men of Harlech. David has always been a huge fan of Ivor Emanuel, but knows they're definitely not related because they spell their surnames differently.
Don't tell me I'm related to him.
All right, then I won't. No, I can reveal to you that the man who appeared in the film Zulu in 1964 and sang Men of Harlech, rousing all the Welshmen, is in fact your fourth cousin.
No.
He is.
No. My lord.
He's born in Margam, Talbot.
That's right.
Like many other famous Welsh singers.
You realise I've got to retract that and apologise to all the people over all the years I said, I'm not related to him. So he had the double M.
He doesn't come down with a double M. His father decided to add the M.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
What, to make it more important?
Could be.
Oh. So which way? Where are we? Show me.
We're here. You're at the bottom here.
Yeah.
And we can go back to your second, third great-grandparents.
Yeah.
Rhys Emanuel and Anne
Right.
John. And they're your common ancestors. And you come all the way down through his line to him here. And you are fourth cousins.
Good heavens.
Even though there's an age difference, you're fourth cousins.
Good Lord. No more surprises. This is too much. This is too much even for a Welshman. No, I think it's great. I mean, I've always loved him. I don't know where to... I'm speechless. I'm speechless. That's a lovely surprise, though. Thank you. Thank you.
Now David is on the trail of his grandfather, John Leslie Emanuel. He's back in Merthyr at Cyfarthfa Castle Museum to meet with military historian Jeremy Banning. David was always told by his father that his grandfather was a commanding officer in World War I. But what Jeremy has uncovered from the start of the war in 1914 does not bode well.
It says he was discharged under King's regulations, and that means he was actually deemed unfit for war service, or was not going to be an efficient soldier.
Really?
We don't know why. There's nothing in the records to determine why that was.
2 years later, John Leslie Emanuel did eventually manage to join up. But he was not an officer, he was a private. And by November 1916 was serving with the deadly machine gun corps, fighting in the Somme, defending the town of Ypres.
We lost hundreds of thousands of men defending this this beautiful Flemish city.
Gosh.
And he was just around this area around here between Weerstraat and the canal. So this is where he was, fighting through the winter of 1916.
Can you imagine the conditions?
And that is the coldest winter on living memory. It gets down to -20. So he's out there in these horrible conditions.
So, far from being a commissioned officer, what Jeremy has found is a regular private who's fighting the enemy, the bitter cold, and disease. And by March 1917 was seriously ill with
trench fever. It's caused by the infected bites of body lice, and the men were covered in lice.
But it was trench fever that probably saved his life. Evacuated from the front, David's grandfather missed one of the bloodiest battles of the war at Passchendaele.
He's a lucky man. He's lucky because he is no longer with them when they're taking part in probably their most savage battle of the entire war.
Yeah.
And the army records also reveal another important story for David. He'd always believed his grandfather was a commissioned officer. But in 1916, he was a private fighting in the trenches of the Somme. However, it appears he must have displayed exceptional qualities as a soldier, as Jeremy is about to reveal.
Back in March of 1917, his company commander recognises his leadership ability, the qualities that he has, and recommends him for a commission.
Thanks the Lord. Emanuel, strive on.
That's right.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And a story of great success, really. If you think at the beginning, he was originally was told he wasn't going to be an efficient soldier.
Yeah.
And then by 1918, he's training to be an officer.
Amazing. It's a lot to take in.
I'm sure it is, actually. But it's, for me, if that was my grandfather, I'd be pretty proud of his service.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you. That's quite some story.
So fighting in Europe, John Leslie Emanuel may not have a link to the famous Lawrence of Arabia, but he was, just as David's father had told him, a heroic commissioned officer in the British Army in World War I. But what became of him after the war? For the answer, David is on the West Wales coast. And this is one occasion ever fashion-conscious David can't resist dressing up for. Once suitably attired, here on the famous Pendine Sands, he can learn of his grandfather's passion for motorcycles during the 1920s. with expert Anthony Duval.
Wow, what fabulous bikes. Hi.
Nice to meet you, Dave. How are you doing?
You must be Anthony.
I'm Anthony,
Hi.
yes.
As you can see, I'm dressed for the part. Now, I understand...
You look great, by the way.
Thank you very much. My grandfather used to ride bikes back in the 20s.
Yeah.
So is this the sort of bike he would have ridden on?
This is pretty typical of the sort of thing that would have been driven on the beach back in the 20s.
So along this stretch, across here...
Yeah, they would have started here, and there's a 7-mile clear stretch.
Is it 7 miles?
It's 7 miles.
I remember coming as a child. My father used to bring us here, and we used to drive onto the beach and have a picnic, have a swim, and drive off. So they used to race here, did they?
From the early 1920s, Pendine was the venue for car and motorcycle races. In 1924, the famous world land speed record of over 146 miles per hour was set here.
Thousands of people would flock to Pendine to watch the racing back in the 20s, after the First World War.
So that was their fun, really, obviously.
It was excitement. It was somewhere to get away and a bit of escapism. And guys came back from the trenches. And, you know, it was a little bit more excitement for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
David is keen, but it's clear he knows a great deal more about fashion than motorbikes.
This actually looks like a little corset here. What's this?
Yeah, this is just knee pads. So when you're sort of, you know...
Oh, to stop the heat from here?
No, it's just when you're panicking and your knees sort of clench the tank to hold on.
Really?
Yeah.
David's grandfather not only rode here, but was a winner.
So, Anthony, tell me, do you know if actually my grandfather actually raced on this beach?
We know for sure that he definitely raced on the beach. And not only do we know, because I found him in a book, a fabulous book, yeah. And there, tucked away in 1922, we find a lineage, Leslie Emanuel.
Yeah.
So we know from the information on this page that he actually raced in a 2.5-mile sprint. That would have been a straight, as fast as you can for 2.5 miles. And he actually won.
Hey.
Yeah.
The Emanuels like to win. I love the attire, sweaters.
Yeah, sweaters.
Helmets, goggles.
Yeah.
Well, I should imagine after all the depression of the war, this must have been a lot of fun, I should imagine.
Well, look at the crowds as well. It was a huge, huge event.
But there was another champion who also rode here at Pendine and would have been well known to all those who competed here. And it was this man on this motorcycle. And his name? One T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia. So it may not have been in the war where these two men met, but here on the sands of Pendine. For the next part of his grandfather's story, David is in Llandyfri in Carmarthenshire, and the high street that would have been so familiar to him. Here, at the Blue Bell Inn, David can read more of his grandfather, now aged 45, from a report in the Carmarthen Journal, dated December 1939.
Friends all over Carmarthenshire and further afield will read with genuine sorrow of the tragic death of Mr. John Leslie Emanuel of North Lodge near Llandyfri. It appears that on Thursday evening he was walking home from Llandyfri. After crossing Waterloo Bridge, he presumably in the darkness missed the highway and fell into the river. Shouts of help were heard, but the night was so dark that Mr. Emanuel could not be seen in the surging waters. He was carried along with the river, which was in full flood. Mr. Trevor Davies of Llanfair Terrace, Llandyfri, saw Mr. Emanuel's body in a pool in the Towie, a distance of 1 mile from where he had fallen into the river. Gosh, he saw an old tree in the middle of the river, and with a man's arm clinging fast to it. He could not see the body. He returned to Llandyfri, and with Sergeant McLaren and some other men, took a lorry and a grappling line to the spot. The deceased's watch had stopped at 5:29 p.m., coincident with the time his shouts were heard. It is understood the deceased was a strong swimmer. The police were notified and the body was recovered.
Although tragic, this article does go on to offer David a unique insight into the personality of the grandfather he never met.
Of a very genial disposition, he made a large circle of friends in Carmarthen and was very popular in the town. His generous and carefree nature made him a favourite with the men who served under him.
David wants to take that same walk along the riverbank that claimed his grandfather's life over 70 years ago. Then in full flood, but today a much gentler scene. After surviving the horrors of World War I, this tranquil spot seems an unlikely place for him to have lost his life.
I mean, it's hard to believe. This is tranquil. This is beautiful. This is now, it's real, it's life. Then, it was hard, it was death. It must have been desperate. A high river, darkness, and fighting for your life. Desperate for such a brave man. What a cruel way to go, you know? Cruel.
When John Leslie Emanuel died on that fateful night, he left behind an only child, an 11-year-old boy who grew up to be David's father, who in turn told David stories of a heroic grandfather.
So what my father said all those years ago to me as a young boy was absolutely true. So that piece of the jigsaw is now solved, and I shall just remember, I wish I'd met him, obviously, but I shall remember him as a great, wonderful grandfather who I never met.
It's clearly been an emotional experience for David, one he would have loved to have shared with his dad. So, that's precisely what he's about to do. Although his father, John, has not been well, he's been determined to take part. And now David is travelling to his brother Joshua's house in the Vale of Glamorgan for a specially arranged gathering of the Emanuel family clan. Here to complete the gathering is David, excited to share his experience with his only sister Margaret and his many brothers from a family of 11 children.
Where's Daddy? Shemai, Dad. Shemai.
And of course, David's father, 86-year-old John Lawrence Morris Emanuel.
Yes. All the little bits you were telling me when we were young, were there some truth in it? Oh, there's some of the truth.
David can now share everything he's learnt with his dad, John, including that obituary of his father from the Carmarthen Journal.
I don't know if you've seen this, Dad. This was in the Carmarthen Journal, dated... Carmarthen Journal, dated December 8th, 1939. And there's the picture of your father.
Yes.
This is obviously a photocopy, right?
John Leslie. Yes.
And I didn't realise, I mean, did you realise how well-loved he was and how popular he was?
Oh, well, everybody seemed to have known him. Mm. And I think it was a lot to do with his army career and everybody.
Yeah. And look at the size of this article, Daddy.
Oh, it's tremendous.
This is a huge, I mean...
Oh, tremendous.
So I think, Dad, out of all this now that all this has come out, this is evidence here. Yeah. You've when we were a child, you only told us little bits. So now, the age you are, you should tell us a bit more. You should share with us, Dad, because, you know, it's important.
David's quest to learn of his family's ancestry is nearly at an end.
It has just been the most amazing experience. We're kind of a tight family, but when we get together, it's like we've never been apart. And they were waiting, weren't they? They wanted to see what we found. But more than that, revealing the family tree, it's now given me a license to discuss with my father. He has to tell us more. You know, he's now of a certain age, and perhaps now it'll allow him to talk more freely about it, which is wonderful.
The series continues at 7:30 on Monday with actor Ian Polston Davis, and you can find out more about the programme at bbc.co.uk/Wales.